It is so good to see you all. I'm thrilled to see people returning, lots of you in the front, and so nice to see new faces, and I hope I have an opportunity to have a conversation with you personally over the next 2 days or so. I'm sure I will. I think David and team do a great job of creating space and time and really pleasant experiences for us to roll up our sleeves, tell each other what's working, seek inspiration for each other to overcome what's not working in our organizations. Lean into that. Lean into the conversations with me and everyone at WorkBoard team. We are here to serve you, to help you and your organizations achieve your best possible outcomes. So with that, I really want to focus on best possible. It will come as no surprise to anyone. This year, though, my topic is peak performance, and it is a way of encapsulating what best possible really looks like, what it means. It's a way of even putting that in a framework or a set of words that are the absolute top of mind for every one of your CEOs and every one of your CHROs. Over this past year, I've been spending a lot of time with CEOs and CHROs together, and they are both maniacally focused on how do we as an organization achieve peak performance. The turmoil of last year is behind us. The right sizing of our organization's done. Now, we need to perform. We need to deliver. We need to function at our fullest potential. And when I think about that, what does it mean, peak performance? What does functioning at our fullest potential mean? For organizations to achieve and to function at their fullest potential, teams need to function at their fullest potential. And for teams to function at their fullest potential, the individual members and contributors need to function at their fullest potential. And when that all comes together, organizations fly. You've felt it when it's present, and you felt it when it's not. You know the difference as a person, as an individual, maybe in your athletic pursuits, you know, when you're functioning at your fullest performance. Maybe your craft or your skill. You're a member of an orchestra. You create things. You're an artist. You felt it when you're at your fullest potential. You're a team leader, and you felt it when your team is at its fullest potential. What we're in pursuit of, what leaders are in pursuit of, and I think what each of you who's an OKR coach, each of you who's an RML leader, what you're in pursuit of is functioning at your fullest potential most of the time. Not occasionally, not once in a while, but as a sustained state of peak performance. That's what I want to focus on and hopefully help you move closer to and give you some tools and ideas to take home that can help move your organization to that sustained peak performance. That pursuit of peak performance has been our mission and agenda for a very long time. When we started the company, the framework for that was really helping companies and the people in them achieve their best possible outcomes in prosperity and adversity. Now that in prosperity is when we all get lazy, unless we're actually people in pursuit of peak performance. Because then in prosperity, we actually go higher. We aim for more and better. We don't get fat and happy. We stay lean and mean. And in adversity, peak performance is hard. Because even when you are operating at your fullest potential, things are still difficult. Hello, 2023. Right? And we wanted to help companies, organizations in their totality, and the human beings inside operate at their highest in both of those conditions. And the company was founded of very different experiences we were having at the same time. Stark contrasts in performance and our ability to operate our fullest potential. I was inside a Fortune 100 company that at the time had 400,000 people. That's mass. My business was growing very, very quickly, but it was all over the world. And it was a work-from-home company. 50% of the employee base worked from home. By design. By design. Getting aligned on what we were trying to accomplish was brutally hard. Getting facts on where we were on the things we were trying to accomplish was even harder. I spent all my time doing those two things. Not being with my customers. Not innovating. Not doing those things that would truly helped us operate at our fullest performance. And it was a real fact that I would spend 40 hours a month on business reviews, getting ready for them, attending them. A month. A quarter of the month getting ready to have a conversation about the month. A real fact, and I still didn't know whether we were winning the game. Because this deck didn't look anything like that deck, because you couldn't thread the cause and effect between the two, because they were so dense that you couldn't possibly wade your way through and distill the essence of the thing, what was in the way, what needed attention. It was a kitchen sink of a meeting every time. Definitely didn't feel like peak performance. And it didn't enable anyone in my org to operate at their fullest potential. And when we didn't operate at our fullest potential, neither did IBM. By contrast, my co-founder, who's also my partner in life, is a technologist and has always been a competitive athlete. I've liked these two things about him the entire time. And what we had in common, why we work, both as co-founders and as partners, is that we share a desire for excellence. We share a desire to always operate at our fullest potential. He had been, for that time probably 15 years maybe, recording every day his exercise inputs and outputs, the miles covered and the speed, what he was eating and how he was sleeping. He had Excel spreadsheets that you wouldn't believe. And he fastidiously groomed those things. But for him, keeping track of his performance and measuring it enabled him to improve his performance. It's how he knew whether he was performing at his fullest potential or not. And at the same time, I was drowning in bureaucracy. He and his teammates moved to Strava. They moved all their data, they all did the same thing. They moved all their data to Strava at the same time, and suddenly they could all see each other's performance data. And they could see it instantly. They knew how everybody else on the team was measuring and improving, and how they were training, and how that was driving the results in their rides. Individually, they could actually work smarter together. They could measure collectively to improve, and two things happened. They trained less and they won more. And man, did that sound good to me while I was exhaustively training and not winning at all. Like, why can't every team feel that magic? Have the power to bring their most athletic pursuit to whatever it is they're trying to accomplish in the business environment? And WorkBoard was born of that. The idea that we would all have the transparency on how we're doing. We would all be able to use that information to improve our impact. Measuring would be about improving, and all of those things would be about winning more together. That's where it all started. It's where it's still at. Because we haven't fixed this yet. The performance gap is obvious to everyone. Whose company's really at peak performance? No hands up? Yeah, no. Whose business unit's at peak performance? Who's even got a department that's at peak performance? It's elusive. It's really elusive. And not only is it elusive, we all see it. The CEOs and the CHROs I'm talking to, they all see it. They describe the problem differently. And they have different ideas about how to solve the problem. The CEO side, we have a strategy execution gap. We have an alignment and accountability problem. I read Measure What Matters. Let's do OKRs. I think that fixes it. And then they do a little OKRs and they, oh, we got a culture problem. And this culture's in the way. That's why we're not at peak performance. And maybe they say things like, my strategy is going to die at the VP level. Actual words. And the CHRO says, we have a leader effectiveness problem. If only our leaders would coordinate and collaborate cross-functionally on company outcomes. If only. And then they both say, why are the engagement scores in the 40s and 50s? We should fix that. Not recognizing that it's just a byproduct of the three above it. We have a strategy execution gap and a culture problem and a manager effectiveness issue. And the result of that is our engagement scores tell us that we have those problems. The way we've tried to solve it in the past, and we, I mean our companies, is a pretty disjointed approach. And that disjointed approach isn't serving the company well, it's not getting the company to peak performance, and it's not serving the people in it either. On the one hand, which would be what? Your right hand, not mine. We have HR organization focused on individual goals. They've been focused on that for years, decades. CHRO driven, intended to create accountability, rigid system of record, very structured process. Thou shalt comply with the process of having individual goals. There will be no exceptions, and you will put it in this system. This system, not any one you choose. Not your favorite, this one. The thing is, while it's intended to create accountability, and is a very structured process, it's pretty disconnected from what the strategic priorities of the company are. You can't draw a line between those two things. And CHROs will be the first to tell you that the quality of the goals in the system is deeply suspect. And the CEO will say, what I want to know is why does everybody get their bonuses and come out at the top of the performance stack when the company isn't coming out the top of its strategic initiatives? Why are we not doing well, but all the individuals are? What's wrong with that? It's the gap between the company strategy at the top and what each of us individually know and understand. On the other hand, where you guys work, on the CEO's highest priorities, those highest priorities, those strategic priorities, the strategy and the objectives at the top, those are intended to propel execution, drive action, determine people's effort allocation and where they spend their time. And of course, it's what people should be accountable for. In the best case, that's all in WorkBoard. But for a lot of you, that's half in WorkBoard. And the other half is in dozens or hundreds of slide decks, a zillion different KPI dashboards that do not link to the slide deck, and can never be assembled into a picture of the business. Now, of course the gap is big because we've got this fractured approach on this side with the slide decks, and then we've got the structured approach on this other side with the compliance orientation. What we need is those things to connect. And the only reason to have individual goals, of course, is to assure that the company achieves its strategic priorities. But it's too big of a distance, the way we think about it. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you all to start thinking about that gap and talking about how we close it, because that's what's on the mind of your CEO and CHROs, wondering how the heck do we close that gap? You actually have the answer. And you should be asking this question. Why are personal goals and the system mandatory while Alignment, measurement, and transparency on our most important strategic priorities is opt-in. Why is that? Anyone here think that makes sense? It's optional to align and measure and be transparent on how we're achieving the company's most important priorities. It's optional how you go about that, but it's mandatory that you document your personal goals in a specific way at a specific time in a specific system. Cart horse problem here? You should be asking this question. In peak performance, the strategic priorities of the organization are a golden thread that's energizing team performance and individual performance. Strategy flows top down. It follows gravity. But it needs some help. And we need to make sure that it actually flows, that that golden thread is the thing that's binding performance together at the company level, at the team level, and at the individual level. Peak performance for the organization and for each individual in it is highly dependent, wholly dependent on our managers, our team leads. It's their job, it's the job of managers to translate the strategy to the local context of their team. And what do we call that? Localizing the objectives and key results. Why do we say localize? Because it's literally a translation to what's relevant at the team level based on what's strategic at the company level. And it's their job, once that translation is done and clarity exists, to create accountability for focusing on and driving and achieving those strategic priorities. And it's their job to coach team members to make the best contribution so that the team does achieve those strategic priorities. It's not coaching the abstract. It's not coaching on how to do knitting. It's coaching on how, as an individual, you can make a better contribution to the strategic priorities of this team that are driving and enabling the company to achieve its strategic priorities. Managers hold the key, and team OKRs are the unlock. There's an opportunity to help your CHRO and your CEO see that. They haven't put the dots together yet. And when managers have done that translation and created that accountability, individuals have the clarity to execute on the most important work, get feedback on stuff that actually matters, and their individual goals are really coherent and relevant, as opposed to abstract and I had to comply, so I just put something in. Managers, how many of you have heard the decay rate of understanding and actually have used that at your own organizations? It's a concept that looks at what the rate of decay, you could call it the rate of confusion, is as you move down the organization. And it's gross, just bluntly put, because it's an extreme rate of decay or confusion as you go down. The study originally was from MIT Sloan, and it looked at 1,400 companies, and it really cataloged how many people in these 1,400 companies not could say yes or no, I understand the strategy, but could actually name the strategic priorities of their company, which, as we all know, is a harder question than, do you understand the strategy? Yes. No test required, right? This was name the strategic priorities of the company. And by the time you get to the VP level, only 22% of VPs can do it. VP and above is about 5% of the total population of any of your companies. So 95% of the people in the company have almost no chance of having any clarity on what really matters. By the time you get to the director level, it's shrunk to 18%. And when you get below directors, 13% of people can actually name the strategic priorities of the organization. Now that's relevant because strategy is executed by VP and below. That's where the right work or the wrong work is getting done. That's where the "is this more important than that" decision is getting made. Every hour. Not once a quarter, right after the all-hands meeting, but every hour. Every hour. You have to ask yourself, is that why we have a frozen middle? Because your company's made a decision to just get clarity at the top and then to have individual goal compliance across the bottom, but do nothing to help managers in the middle create clarity, drive priorities, create accountability, and take the right actions? So every manager has to either invent their own really smart management model where they drive alignment and accountability, or they have to do all the thinking for everybody down the org in their team or their part of the world. At least 3 different people from 3 different companies told me last night that at their company, all decisions are delegated back up. No kidding. When we don't give managers the ability, the capability to translate the strategy, localize it, create accountability, and coach in the right way, it's exactly what happens. They don't have the power, the clarity, the authority to make decisions. Neither do the people below them, which is the vast number of people who are really driving strategic outcomes at your company. When managers aren't effective, it sounds like this. From people out on the teams and in the environment, you hear, "We have too many priorities." Nothing says I don't have clarity like we have too many priorities. Dependencies are a nightmare. We have change fatigue. We just couldn't change another thing. Bad news. The executive team doesn't know what it's doing. My manager is brilliant, I'm brilliant, but the executive team are morons. Those are classic examples of we don't have managers who can translate the strategic priorities for their team, create clarity and accountability for them, and help people see how they contribute at their fullest potential. Those are the symptoms. How many of you have heard any of those? Yeah. From the executive team, it sounds slightly different. The strategy is not the problem. We have an execution problem. I hear this one all the time. And right after that I hear, "But we're just going to do OKRs to my directs." Like, I would have thought if it was execution, you would have focused on the 99%, not the 1%. Why are our engagement scores in the 40s? What are we doing about this? Our culture is a problem. It's holding us back. We don't have a culture that lets us execute on our strategy. And of course, it's the frozen middle. The VPs and senior directors are killing my strategy. I'm quoting people, I'm not even loosely quoting them, I'm literally quoting them. How many of you have heard that? Particularly those of you chief of staff to CEOs or business unit presidents. That's what they're saying in the Zoom call you're not on for sure, if you haven't heard it. And sometimes it involves table pounding and some drama. Because they've promised shareholders they are going to execute on the strategy. They've made commitments. They've made large financial bets tied to those commitments. They have a lot at stake. And they have a lot of frustration and anxiety about why we can't perform at our peak. Now, when managers are effective, companies are more effective. They execute strategy well. They respond to change. They have high engagement scores in the 90s, and their culture is an accelerator. And you know all this already, because you all have been talking about it for years. You know that an outcome mindset, an OKR process, WorkBoard actually help teams and the team leads create clarity and drive alignment, demonstrate ambition, aim for best possible, take accountability and create it for the key result owners on their teams. It's how they measure and manage and create transparency on results in their team and across teams. It enables them to work across teams on company outcomes. Because if you have clarity on what your objectives and results are, and the other teams speak the same language of objectives and results as you do, you have an opportunity to reconcile conflicts in resources and outcomes. And OKRs, WorkBoard are how they do those things. You know it gives them the facts to make hard decisions faster. Who's not really performing? What's not really panning out how we expected? What should we do about that? And how do we act quickly on it? Not as I was before WorkBoard, waiting 29 more days to get that information. But actually, in less than 29 minutes, I know the problem and I can start working on the solution. You know that OKRs and WorkBoard create a quarterly cycle that helps people adapt to what's changed. In fact, it gives them agency in change. A great retro is exactly that. Change agency for people, the ability to have a relationship to it and some ownership to it and some control over it. What did we learn? Why should we change? To be authors of that change, not victims of it. Whiplashed by things they don't understand and frustrated because they don't. And OKRs, WorkBoard give a lot of signal to managers on who to coach, and of course the clarity to coach them on what? The results that matter. You've been talking about this for a long time. What's new, I think, is thinking about how you talk about that, how you describe it, and to whom. HR needs to be a partner, a friend in the fight on peak performance. Obviously, the strategy execution and the business-led strategy execution is wholly dependent upon managers doing these things well. If they don't, you simply don't perform at your peak. But it turns out so too is the talent management and performance management programs that the HR team is running. They too are wholly dependent upon managers doing these things well. And you have an answer in the middle. You enable both of those things to be true. The business to execute well and the CHRO to pursue and to realize the fullest talent management approach they imagine. Strategy execution cannot succeed without effective managers in the middle, nor can HR's talent management strategy without effective managers in the middle. You have the how. And I think now you have new allies in the fight because CHROs are very leaned in with CEOs on peak performance. To that end, we have two exciting announcements, both related to how do we partner with CHROs and how do we help organizations achieve peak performance, in particular, enable managers to get there. First, we're extending our Workday partnership from Now it's a 5-year-long partnership. They're a customer, of course, Workday people here. They're an investor in our company and long have been. And we have an integration that is Workday org structure and people structure, reporting structure to WorkBoard. We're extending the partnership now to have a stronger relationship in the marketplace. So among other things, we are in their AI marketplace where you can take advantage of and your companies can even acquire WorkBoard through that marketplace. And their field sales organization that talks to customers going into the fourth quarter will have an incentive to actually talk about better together solutions, WorkBoard and Workday. So as they engage the HR department, the people department and functions, they are also motivated personally to bring complete solutions and complete answers to customers. And last, not least, goal integration between the two systems. So if you use WorkBoard to set personal goals, they go to Workday. If you use Workday to set personal goals, they show in WorkBoard. So managers and team members can make sure that the team's pursuit and the individual's pursuit of performance are aligned and in lockstep as opposed to disconnected and disjointed. I'm super excited about that. 2 weeks ago, we were at the Workday conference as well. There's a lot of momentum. New CEO this year, and he's just got a fire in the belly for partnering and bringing complete and full solutions to customers. Super exciting evolution in their strategic priorities as well. I'm proud to say those are managed in WorkBoard. Now, second is a set of announcements about WorkBoard, the platform itself, and in particular, some enhancements we've made to better enable peak performance for the organization, for teams, and for individuals, with a strong emphasis on how do we help managers really operate at their peak. They're the pivot for how our companies and the people in them achieve their best possible outcomes. They're the key. So, to that end, Sameera is going to give you a tour.
Thank you. All right, I'm super excited to share a couple different things and ways that you're going to be able to drive peak performance across your organization. Now, to drive peak performance, we need a strong performance foundation. What does that mean? What do we need there? So one, everyone needs to be able to see what the company strategy is and what the company objectives and results are. That should then connect to the team objectives and results, the translation of that company strategy, of the company objectives, to what the team is driving. And that should flow to the individual objectives, and ideally synced with Workday. When the strategy is the golden thread of performance, we have this critical foundation to really operate at our peak. Also, when we have those elements of the company strategy connected back to the team objectives, back to the individual objectives, we can use that data to really get smart about where should we be focusing, where should our attention go, and how do we operate better cross-functionally. Coming soon, you'll be able to use an AI assistant and have a conversation with WorkBoard and ask it questions on how am I doing on my objectives and results? What teams am I dependent upon? In this case, I'm going to ask WorkBoard about one of my key results. I'm working on a cost reduction key result, and I want to know what teams to align to. WorkBoard's going to come back and let me know the teams that are also working on similar results. In this case, there's a team in finance that's working on a $60 million cost savings opportunities. The enterprise infrastructure team's working on a key result I should look at, along with the global IT team. I don't need to go find them. I'm having a conversation, just like we all do, wondering, what other teams I should be talking to? I'm just asking WorkBoard, and it's giving me the answers. You'll be able to have these conversations based off of the foundation you've provided in WorkBoard. Once we have that solid foundation for performance, we want to align our efforts. And to align our efforts, everyone needs to be able to see what that long-range strategy is. Most of you have a strategy today in your organizations. in a PowerPoint, or better yet, in WorkBoard. Now we're going to make it even easier to go from that strategy and set team objectives and individual objectives as well, using AI. Now, it's not enough to just set the objectives and results. You should also quickly orchestrate the action so everyone knows what they're working on, what do we need to go do to move the needle on those outcomes, and manage your cross-org dependencies and risks. One way we're making that really easy, in addition to the co-author you already know and love, is to be able to take your strategy documents and upload them into WorkBoard for it to set your objectives and key results for you. So in this case, I'm creating OKRs from my document. I'm coming right into Canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and select my USPS strategy, the PDF you guys are all familiar with. In this case, I want co-author to focus on PO boxes. So I'm going to ask it to focus there, and it's going to come back and suggest 3 objectives and key results based off of PO box utilization, enhancing the customer experience for PO boxes, and so on and so forth. This is not a deck based on WorkBoard. This is a deck everyone has seen a million times. A lot of words, some numbers, you're trying to figure out what the strategy really means and says. And I'm uploading it into WorkBoard, and it's suggesting objectives and key results based off of that. I can come back into my Canvas, edit and adjust those key results, of course, as you're all familiar with, make them lagging metrics, leading metrics, and I'm off and running. Later, you'll hear from Joel and Jamie from the Insight Age about how AI is really speeding up, as we can see here, the creation of setting objectives and key results. And if you're wondering, how does it know what to do? What if the objectives and key results aren't good? We want to go have those conversations still. You can still have the conversation, but you don't need to spend 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours. I've spent a lot of hours in workshops, no longer. Quickly, in seconds, you have a draft to start from, and what you'll hear from Joel is, often the draft is better than what we could have come up with on our own. And you have a huge accelerant. If we only have a quarter, that's 12 weeks, we don't want to spend the whole quarter setting our objectives and results. We want to quickly align so then we can execute. Now, strategy without execution is lovely, but really nothing, right? We're not going to get the results that we want. And so we want to make it even easier to drive progress on your objectives and results. In WorkBoard, you'll now be able to use AI to generate briefs so it's serving you the data of what should I be looking at? What are victories in my organization or teams that I want to look at? What are areas that need my attention? And again, you don't need to hunt and peck, but it's coming to you in email right at the top of your My Objectives page or Teams. In addition, you can get automated status reports and leverage scorecards and business reviews to zone in on what needs your attention. With your scorecard, talk about what are the risks, what's in the way, what's trending in the wrong direction. Let's have our conversations there. And with the business reviews, no longer are we spending the 40 hours to prepare for that monthly ops review. We can easily see at any point in time what needs our attention, what needs focus, and we're having that conversation when we get to the meeting. We're no longer going to the meeting to get informed. I bet a bunch of us do that today. We're going to the meeting already informed, and we're using the meeting time to make decisions that can propel us forward. When you go into WorkBoard, you'll be able to see all of your briefs on your My Objectives page. In this case here, I can see my brief for my Monday mornings. This is what I eat for breakfast, if you will. I'm getting served up what are the accomplishments and victories, what are the areas needing attention. And this is coming to me in my email, my Teams, again in my WorkBoard, and I don't need to go find it. I have it. I can create a new brief, and in this case, I want to create one for my IT leadership team, which is the team that I lead, and I want to create a brief in advance of my staff meeting. We meet every Monday afternoon, so everyone on the team should come to the meeting informed Monday morning. I'm going to include the DigiPay team, which is a product launch we're driving, along with my own team's objectives. We're all going to get it Monday morning. It's going to come in email, and it's going to get published to our team's meeting. Again, we're serving it up to you, so you don't need to go find it. In addition, we'll be able to get that same brief on the scorecards you already have, the business reviews you already have, and you're off and running. Now, as Deidre shared, managers are a big part in translating the strategy. We want to enable our managers and make managers' jobs and lives a lot easier so that they can focus on coaching people to results and elevating their impact and contributions. Those two things should be hand in glove. Often today it's, okay, I'm going to learn how to be a manager over here, I'm going to go to this course, and then I have to run my team meeting this way, and I'm trying to piece everything together, and then I need to give feedback over here, and man, being a manager is hard. There's a lot we need to keep up. So how do we make that all easier? Well, one way is having a coach on call. How many of you are managers in the room? Okay, about half it seems. How many of you have thought, yeah, man, this could be easier. I want to give feedback, I don't know how. How do I run my team meeting? How do I think about that structure? Well, we're going to make that easier for you, where you have this handy coach on call, and you can ask it for help on how do I give feedback to this person? If we don't give our team members feedback, then it's impacting and undermining our team's impact overall. Almost as important as giving feedback, we should be able to request feedback as well. We're going to make that easier for you, and then make it easier to have your regular one-on-ones in the context of your team objectives and results. We shouldn't be running our team meetings one way and our one-on-ones the other way. They should all come together so it's a cohesive thread for everyone in our org and team. As a manager, I can use my Direct and Dotted page, which is my handy dashboard. I use this every Monday, where I can see all of my team members and what their responsibilities are. In this case, I can see that Ashley has 3 objectives, 6 results, 5 are stalled, and 1's at risk. So I know where to go focus my time and effort. In this particular week, I'm using this to tune up my one-on-ones for the week. What are we going to go talk about? There we go. I'm going to prepare for my one-on-one with Roger. It's not going to be a conversation I'm excited to have. In this case, I need to give Roger some tough feedback. So I'm going to pop into my manager lens in our one-on-one, and I'm going to use the feedback helper here. The feedback helper is going to help me frame feedback using the SBI framework, situation, behavior, impact. And in this case, I'm going to need to provide some constructive and difficult feedback to Roger. Unfortunately, he's been undermining me in meetings, and he's on my team. Don't know where to start on that feedback, so I'm going to ask the feedback helper, and it's going to ask me to provide a bit more context. And I'm going to say he undermines me in front of others. And then I'm going to share that he does this frequently in meetings and interrupts me. The feedback helper is prompting the manager and guiding the manager through the steps on how to provide the feedback. Once I provide a bit more feedback here and a bit more context of the situation, the feedback helper will come back and structure that feedback in the situation, the behavior, and the impact. In this case, the situation is, well, Roger, during our team meeting last Tuesday, the behavior, when I shared my input on the project timeline, you dismissed my suggestion, and the impact is, this made me feel undervalued and frustrated. I otherwise would have probably just brushed this off, said maybe he'll stop one day. It's fine, I'll get over it. But really, if I do that, it's undermining my own team. And so the feedback helper gives me a really easy way to structure that feedback, the way to provide it, questions I might ask, and a path forward. Now, there might be other scenarios where the feedback helper will prompt me and make sure that it can actually provide the right feedback. It might not be able to provide feedback on everything. And so we have an even trickier situation that I'm going to dive into. Jackie, in this case, needs to provide feedback to Alan. Again, a bit more constructive feedback. The tough situation here is that Alan is making Jackie feel uncomfortable. So she's going to tell that to the feedback helper. He told her that she looked pretty in a meeting, and that made her feel uncomfortable. Unfortunately, also, Alan is Jackie's boss. In this case, the feedback helper is coming back and says, I apologize, but I need more context to provide appropriate guidance on this sensitive situation. So this has real ethics in here. Well, I tell it, I'm at my desk, he's my boss, I'm uncomfortable, what do I do? And the feedback helper will come back and say, you know, this is a delicate situation involving your boss, and you might consider speaking with HR. So for those of you who are wondering, it'll only provide guidance and feedback on situations that it can handle and it makes sense. Otherwise, it'll guide the team to the appropriate resources. And it uses nice language like, please prioritize your comfort and safety. I know people in this room will resonate with this. Other people will not resonate with this feedback. That's okay. Those of you who do, we know. We see you.
We haven't all worked for Alan yet.
Yeah. Otherwise, we think of that as really constructive feedback. We can also give spontaneous feedback on any given item in WorkBoard. In this case, I want to give feedback to a few team members on the DigiPay voice assistant and the progress they're making. I'm typing in my feedback. Great job on making such progress on launching the DigiPay integrations this quarter, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to zhuzh this feedback up. I can make it shorter, I can make it friendlier, I can make it more fun, I can make it warmer, I can make it more professional, I can make it more constructive, depending on the situation. In this case, I'm going to make it warmer, and it goes from, you know, a fine message to fantastic job on making such incredible progress with the DigiPay integrations this quarter. A little bit warmer tone, I'm going to use that and send it off. This goes on your feedback page in WorkBoard, along with, if you use Microsoft Teams, right in Teams. But it's providing this integrated experience where we're getting feedback on the outcomes that we're actually driving. When you get it in Teams, you see it there too, and everyone loves to get a little bit of positive reinforcement. Similarly, I can go to my feedback page and request feedback as well, just as important, and I can request it on specific items, specific key results, actions, work streams, and say, in this case, I'd like to request feedback from James on the P1 vulnerabilities I've been focused on. We're making it a lot easier for managers to provide that coaching and guidance to their teams because a manager's job is to fundamentally translate that strategy, coach their teams to great outcomes, provide the feedback. There's a lot they need to juggle. So how do we make it easier and bring it all together and elevate the contributions of their team members? Lastly, we want to make it easier to assess performance. And AI is going to really help with this. We're at the end of the year or at the end of the cycle. How do you summarize performance from your employee or from your team member? Many of you today have to try to remember this and say, okay, what did my team member work on in the last week, the last month? It's all memory-based. And now you can use AI to make that process seamless. What you'll also be able to do in partnership with HR, which is why you want them as a friend in the fight, is to drive these structured conversations across the business. And you can use those templated conversations, and it's in the same context that the teams are driving the outcomes that they focus on week in, week out. It's not this disjointed piece of work where, oh yeah, okay, I need to go remember at the end of the quarter to go fill out this thing, but like, where do I go? How do I log in? We're already focused on the outcomes day in, day out. And so when time comes to have these conversations with your team members, you have the data and the facts in front of you. You can easily assess goal achievement and then sync that back to Workday. So in this case, I'm logged in as someone in HR where I'm driving these agenda templates across the organization. I'm creating a new template for our performance conversations. This is going to be a conversation that we have at the end of the month. We're going to include the team's OKRs. We're going to include the team members' key results that they own. We're going to include the personal objectives if relevant. And then we can add structured discussion topics that everyone needs to discuss going forward. Once I schedule this, I can decide who should be included. Is it everyone in the organization? Is it one business unit? Is it under one specific leader? I choose the cycle time as well, so these need to get done at the last 2 weeks of October. And I'm off and running. The format of these conversations are the format that we're all familiar with today, similar to the team meetings and one-on-ones in WorkBoard. So here I am in my one-on-one, in my performance discussion with Roger, I see pace, performance, alignment, competence, and engagement, where we can self-assess. And I, as Roger's manager, can use that manager lens again and run an impact summary, which is what has Roger been up to in the last year, or the last month, or the last week. It doesn't need to be for that performance conversation that happens once a quarter or once a year or whatever that might be. I personally, as Sameera, not as my demoer, use this every single week in advance as I prepare for my one-on-ones for the week to see what my team is up to. The impact summary will tell me what has Roger accomplished, what's at risk or stalled, what are suggested topics for our next one-on-one, and helps me guide that conversation. Again, I don't need to be reliant on memory. I like to think I have a good memory, but this reminds me of all the things that I might need to discuss with my team in the context of the objectives and results we're already driving, in the context of the company strategy. So, when we have all these elements come together, we have a strong performance foundation where we can see the company objectives flowing to the team objectives and results and the individual objectives, and everyone knows how they contribute. We can really drive peak performance with WorkBoard IE.
Thank you. For those of you who are having a small heart attack thinking we're trying to be an HR solution, we're not. But we actually think that when we talk about coaching and feedback and assessing performance, it must be in the context of a person's contribution to a team and a team's contribution to the strategic priorities of the enterprise. And we think today that is much, much, much too hard for the organization as a whole and for any one human manager. And as long as it remains hard, we will never achieve peak performance as an organization or as teams or as individuals. That's why the foundation in the middle is so important, and it's why enabling managers to skillfully align efforts, drive progress, elevate the contribution of every member, and give fair and fact-based and frequent feedback on that contribution to team outcomes is the difference maker. And if you think not for a second about your org structure and the politics in your company, but you think about yourself as a team leader. What do you lose sleep over? What's hard? What causes you anxiety? It's the managing of the people required to manage results. We want to make those things seamless, whole, and easy. And we think that unlocks peak performance for all of you. 3 takeaways before Sameera and I get out of here. This is the right time, fall, to start planning for peak performance next year. 3 things to take away from here. 1, partner with HR. There's such a symbiotic relationship with the CHRO, the head of people, with the learning and development or leader development team, with the talent management team, with the people analytics team. They're an ally for you. You're an ally for them. They don't know those things yet. But build the partnership, build the bridge, expect it to take a little bit of time. But they're an important partner in really achieving peak performance. The second is to think of what you're doing and where you are as a journey and assume that you improve over the course of the journey. Intellectually, we know there's no start perfect. Emotionally, we all hope we did start perfect. Drop that and set the course forward where you measure the impact you've had, you define the impact in front of you, and you take your stakeholders along that journey. And the third, use this brain trust. Learn everything you can while you're here, even if what you learn is what you don't want to do at your company. Right? learn from others, learn from every session, ask all the questions you want to ask, and keep on asking them in your own pursuit of peak performance. Enjoy the conference. Thank you very much.